And welcome to episode 216 of Habs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Blaine Pudvang. I'm joined by my co-host, Treg Wilson.
Hello.
And we are joined by our special guest, Daniel McKay of Boxing Rock Brewing.
Hey, how's it going?
We're happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So for those who may have missed our last episode, we've partnered with Boxing Rock, and our goal is to introduce people in Nova Scotia to your wonderful new product, Puck Off Ale. And if anyone wants to try a 12-pack out, free on us, all you have to do is just follow us on our socials and tell us why they love the show. So Daniel, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a background on Boxing Rock?
Yep. So Boxing Rock started, I believe it was 8 or 9 years ago. I'm not too sure. I haven't been there since the beginning. So a little while ago, and they've just been growing and growing. I started about 5 years ago, where we just sort of had some core brands, our Hunky Dory, our Vickers, our Red, stuff like that. But in recent years, we've been branching out a little bit more, and we get some cool new ones like Puck Off, which we got right there, which is actually mine and one of my co-brewers' creations. We wanted to start making something that was a little bit more accessible to, people. Some people really don't like the heavier craft beers and it's not their thing, which I completely understand. So we really try to make, yep, that's a perfect one. That's my favorite. So
Temptation Red, it's pretty good.
But we ended up coming up with Puck Off. It's sort of as close as we could get to a domestic style beer. So your Keith's, your Budweiser, stuff like that. But it's a craft beer. It's local. You can support us. And I think it holds up right next to all of those big brands. So we just want to get the word out there that, there is a local craft option to enjoy while you're watching the hockey games. So, yeah.
It pairs really well after a beer league hockey game. You put in that effort of not back checking, and then you have yourself a couple of beers after.
Yeah, they definitely go down good, and they kind of remove some worry sometimes. So.
Yeah, you forget about those times you got burned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, so anybody wants to win a 12-pack of that, remember, follow us on the socials and then put on a comment or retweet and tell us why you like listening to the show. Let all your friends know, and you'll be entered to win. And you have to be 19 years of age. You have to be able to get to Nova Scotia to collect your beer, because that's where it is. Is there any plans to expand beyond Nova Scotia?
I'm not too sure on the logistics side. I know it can be difficult exporting out of Nova Scotia just because of our laws. So I'm sure it's been thought of, and if we could do it, it should be in the pipeline sometime. So
I hope so.
Yes, I do too.
Can't let Keats be the only Nova Scotia brand out there.
No, I don't think that's absolutely right. We need to get some more representation for sure. So
exactly, we need some decent beer out there.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it might be more a logistical thing. So hopefully in future, we can. I know we do from time to time send some kegs to New Brunswick and stuff like that. So hopefully in the future we can see some Puck Off across the country. I think that would be really great.
All right, well, we're going to switch over to some hockey talk. And obviously you're wearing an Avalanche jersey for some strange reason.
Yep.
Did you lose a bet?
No, it's actually when I was young, the Montreal Canadiens lost one of the greatest goalies of all time. And that kind of really scared me as a child. So I went with the goalie, Mr. Waugh. So yeah, that would be why I'm cheering for the Avalanche. A young me really liked Patrick Waugh. So I kind of went with him in their inaugural season. And I can say I've been cheering for them since 95, 96. So I've, it's not a bandwagon thing currently. It's been quite some time, but.
Treg went the other way. He stayed with the team.
Oh, did he? That's unfortunate.
It's about the logo on the front, not the name on the back.
Yeah.
Although I was a huge Waugh fan as well, and I was devastated by that. But I don't know. I just stayed with the team, and through the years, I found a new player to root for each decade, I guess you could say. And here we are. So
looking for the next one.
It'll come.
It'll come.
But
we're not quite as lucky as Daniel here, who has a cup contender in his midst already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's It hasn't always been that way though. The last, previous to 3 years ago, they were definitely not a cup contender. So there are hard
No.
times. So
Now on that, so the Canadians are just starting out with, well, it's going to be a rebuild. Let's be honest. So Gorton's going to have to do a little bit of house cleaning, and the team's not going to be very good for about a year or two, at least. How hard was it for you to watch your team go through that process?
Yeah. Not to say it was a little bit extra difficult, but when you're clamoring just to watch games because you're watching a team on the West Coast of the US, it makes it that much more difficult. It's not like it's on CBC or TSN, whatever it happens to be every night, like the Canadians or, the Leafs. So that kind of, it dissuades you a bit more, obviously, because you're kind of tuning in for a 6-1 loss. That's not fun for anybody. The positive is, you look at a guy like Nathan McKinnon in that huge slump. He wasn't a world breaker like he is right now, but we saw him grow. And a guy like Rantanen and Landeskog, you kind of get to see these guys and you attach to them. And hopefully the Habs organization, I don't know them supremely well, but from top to bottom, I'm sure there's some prospects that you can really key in on. And that's what made it easier for me. You watch those guys and you see them start to take off and the team will start to take off with them. It's kind of rewarding you stuck with them the whole time. And you start to see them get some recognition that they probably deserve. So hard, the simple answer, hard. But if you like hockey, obviously you're going to watch. So
Yeah, I think that's the key. You just got to like the sport and then really love your team and know that the NHL isn't much different than junior leagues. You're going to go through years, although the years last longer. The years of contention or the years of playing good hockey are longer. But every 10 to 15 years, you got to reset the team, and you gotta start almost from anew and build a new team to come up, unless you're like Washington or Detroit of the 90s, where you could just keep getting these draft picks that filled in for the old guys coming out properly. And I think that's where Montreal is now. It's been 20 years since they really tried to do a rebuild, and here we are now with what probably looks like it's going to be a rebuild next year.
I don't think the Canadians have ever done a rebuild.
I don't think they have. They never had to, not pre-90s, because they have always had a fairly good team and a fairly good system. But since now, with the cap and everything, I don't think they ever really done a proper rebuild. I don't think they ever have.
Now, as an Avalanche fan, you've been able to see Roy play, coach, be a member of the executive. Do you, in your opinion, feel that he would actually be useful as a hockey executive?
It's a tough one because sometimes you love the player, but was Wayne Gretzky a great coach? Right? That's always the question. The answer is no. It was a weird one because his first year, I think, if you think back, you guys might not remember as not being Habs fans, but that first game in Anaheim where he's behind the bench and he got into it with Boudreau, like you want to see that. And it makes you wonder, like the Landeskog's and McKinnons that weren't really doing, a whole bunch of stuff. Was that kind of the fire that got them going? Was it his leadership that got them, going really well like that? Or was it the back half of his coaching with Colorado, and he was just, I want this guy for no reason. You know what I mean? Like he has a lot of that. There was a lot of questionable picks, I would say, fairly obvious draft choices that he just wouldn't make because it wasn't his system. And if he's an executive, he's going to have even more say when it comes to that stuff. I don't know if I trust his process on that. Personally, that's just from, the however many years he was coaching for us. Or it could be the opposite. He could have completely learned. So to give you a non-answer, I'm not actually sure. My immediate reaction is no, but maybe.
I personally think Waugh wouldn't be a bad coach in Montreal. I think, he'd light the fire under the players. I think he has a passion that the fans would love and everyone would. But as far as executive decisions, I agree with you, Daniel. I think he would want the player he wants, regardless of who's available, if it's the best person or not, which is similar to kind of what Bergevin was doing, like with Kotkaniemi and a couple other guys. He was like, I'm going to draft for need, not draft for best player, which I think you should be doing at least in the top 10. as best player available, not so much for need. And I think Waugh would definitely, if he had a say, and I think that's why he left Colorado, because Sakic was kind of like, nope, I'm not doing that. And he was like, well, then I don't want to be a part of this. And I think Waugh, as a coach, as long as he knows as a coach that Gorton and whoever the GM's going to be is going to be like, we're making the decisions at this point. You can give us input, but we're not going off the board because you like, Simon Turcotte from, your old team there from the Ramparts, and we're not doing that. As long as he knows that's going to happen, I think he would make a good coach. But I don't see him as an executive, an alumni, but not an executive.
That's the other part too, right? Like what he did with Colorado coaching. No matter what, the fans will still love him. But does it kind of tarnish his legacy in Montreal if he goes in as a coach or an executive and really kind of messes the team up? He's kind of, even though he was traded, he's still kind of one of the beloved Montreal Canadiens of all time, right? So that might play a factor too in his own decision, I guess. But
I think that buys him an extra couple of weeks of leeway from the press. But other than that,
yeah,
I can't see them not piling on if he screws up.
His first questionable call or first questionable, everyone will putt. It's Montreal. He's going to get piled on like crazy. Like it's your win or you're terrible. It's the same when he was goaltending, especially in the last few years. The 9-1 Detroit game. They booed him every time the fans booed him. The media was all over him.
Worse. Mock cheered him,
which is even worse. So you got to look at that and think that was just one game. Same thing happened in the year they won the cup in '93. Waugh never had a good regular season. He was average at best. He had over 3 goals against average and under a 9 save percentage. And there was talk then, maybe Waugh should be traded. Maybe we should get rid of Waugh, blah, blah, blah. And this is what a lot of people don't realize is this is the Montreal, why it's so hard for the Canadiens to attract free agents and to attract players is because of this. I don't want to say cesspool because it's not all bad, but it's when you're winning, it's the greatest place to play. When you're not winning, you just want to bury yourself in a hole and never come out again. And that's Montreal. I don't know if Colorado's like that. I don't know what their fan base is like, but I think Toronto's similar too. Toronto's almost the same way, although Toronto thinks they're going to win the cup every October. And then they never do. But Montreal's the opposite. Montreal thinks they're going to suck all year. Then when they do success, it's a big miracle. Every player that they pick up is going to be shitty. And it's always negative right from the start. And then I think that's the main issue in Montreal right now. And I think I don't know if Waugh wants to deal. I mean, he wants to be in Montreal, but I don't know if he does what he does in Colorado. He has to know I would have to know if he learned from that. Like, cause you can't get away with that in Montreal. They already say he took his ball and went home twice. So why would they want him again? So
now in Colorado, you guys, like I said, you guys are a cup contending team, but there is some question marks in net.
Yeah. I've been a proponent of this when just talking to people. I don't think there actually is question marks in net. I think you have a high skill, high ceiling team that has played one game together this season, the entire top to bottom roster. And I know that happens, but I mean, Colorado's playing every game with 2 of your top 4 defensemen out, 1 or 2 of your top 6 guys out. You really can't judge and start to, raise the alarms when last year they were one of the best defensive teams by advanced metrics, right? And you look at that and there was a bit of changeover, but the guys that stepped up are actually playing better defensively. It's not a full unit. There's COVID. McKinnon was out. Makar has been out. Bowen Byram. I think come the new year, barring, any COVID, shutdowns or pauses, whatever ends up happening there, you'll probably see that goaltending isn't going to be as big as a question mark. Also getting Francouz, the backup, back for the first time in 2 years. He, Homer glasses and everything aside, he is one of the better backup goalies in the league. Like, he's a guy I'm not worried in the slightest when he starts. So I think that's a big thing to have back too. And yeah, maybe I'm just being a homer here, but I don't think it's as big of a problem as it seems to be. Like, when I read headlines, all the media is just Colorado's got a goalie problem. I don't think they have a goalie problem. I think they've had an injury and COVID problem over the last few months. So
you think that their goaltending is good enough to get past the second round?
Yes, I do. I like the shade. It was good there, but Kemper, as we can see with Grubauer in Seattle right now, Kemper is an upgrade on Grubauer. Grubauer goaltending wasn't the reason they got eliminated the last 2 years in the playoffs. Not even in the slightest. One's a bonehead move by the captain that should have been, offsides. That completely changes the game. And I think last year it was fatigue. They, so many games to end the season, right? Back to back to back to back. And then right into the playoffs, they were just destined to be eliminated when they were eliminated last year. I think this year, if hopefully we get there, that won't be the issue this year. I think it will be the depth this year, the defensive side, like you said, if they're not back, that's the concerning part. So yeah, I think they're okay in that right now. Knock on wood. We'll see what happens though.
I think that's the media way of looking at it, because Colorado does have a great forward group. When healthy, they have a great defensive group. So then you look at the goaltending, and there's not a star goalie there. I mean, Kemper, I guess you could, when he was in Minnesota, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't, and I think that's why they say you're weak in goal, because you don't have that name goalie. You don't have a Vasilevsky or a Price or a whoever. You know what I mean?
Could have a Price.
They could.
Nah. I want to pay for Nathan McKinnon for the next 10 years. I don't want to have to worry about. That's the unfortunate part about having Price. But yeah, I mean, Kemper, you're right. He's not a named guy, but if you kind of look at I know I keep saying advanced stuff. I like the advanced metrics quite a bit, just because it completely removes the human error for the most part. Obviously, there's still an eye test that you have to pass, but his numbers and the way he played in Arizona the last few years, I think he had like a 9.26 save average or a 9.31 in one of the years, and that's in front of a terrible Arizona team. So I think it's just more people don't know necessarily who Kemper is. I've seen him on mock lists at the start of the year for Team Canada even. So I feel like he's just kind of on the verge there of, if he blew up this year or next year with Colorado, he'd be like, okay, he's a true starting number one goalie. It's just, I think he suffers from, he played for Arizona and Minnesota when they weren't great. So, but he's still unproven, like he said, because he's not a star goalie in most people's eyes. So you're right. The media can go both ways with that. And what can you do, right? Like you have great forwards and a pretty good defense. Oh, you're right. It's got to be the goaltending's the issue. And I don't really think it is. I mean, if you look at the last 10 games with Colorado, when you're scoring 7 goals a night, like 6 goals, whatever it happens to be, you're going to let in a couple soft ones, no matter what. So people keep saying, on Reddit and Twitter, like, you can't let in the soft one. Yeah, you're right. You can't let in the soft ones, but the close games, he's played like a great goalie. And in the games that are out of reach, he lets in a couple squeakers. It's, it's just kind of the way hockey works, in my opinion, but we'll see, I guess.
So you're saying he is this generation's Chris Osgood?
Yes, absolutely. As a guy that hates Chris Osgood and the Detroit Red Wings, yes, very similar. Yep, absolutely.
I had to put that dig in there too.
Yeah, that's okay. I understand. That's all right.
He needs to win a cup though to be this generation's Chris Osgood.
Yes, he does.
Because let's admit, Detroit had many goalies that should never have been cup winning goalies, and they won a cup just because they played for Detroit.
Absolutely.
Mike Vernon comes to mind at 40 years old or however old he was when he won a cup with Detroit. But but yeah, I think that's the narrative they make with Colorado, because defense and forward are so good. Oh, well, why? It must be the goaltending is why they're losing games or whatever. And if we want to talk about soft goals, when Brodeur didn't get a shutout, he always let a soft goal in. So I always bring that up to people. Brodeur is one of the greatest goalies of all time. But if he didn't get a shutout, guaranteed one of the goals he let in was a soft goal.
Right. So the Hawaii used to let in a soft goal or two every game.
That's You have a 3-1 win for Colorado when Wall was there, and it's because at the end of the game, he let a softie in. I think it's just part of the game more than it is indicative.
Held his glove up in front of someone to show off, and he dropped the puck.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's not the soft goal. It's all about timing. Are you up 3-0 when you let the soft goal in, or are you up only 1 goal?
Yeah.
You make the save when it counts. Now, so far, Kemper's done that. This playoff is going to be the real test. If he can actually play the way he's been playing and get them further in the playoffs than they have been lately, then yeah, he'll be given the respect he's due. But if for whatever reason they falter again in the playoffs, they're probably going to have to make some changes.
I think a reasonable hockey fan, though, Blaine, will look at that and say,
Yeah.
was he really the reason, though? Like, sure, they may not make it
True.
past the second round, but if he has a 920 save percentage and, has high danger shots were way up, then you can say, well, it wasn't really him. It was his defense in front of him. Or, maybe McKinnon only scores 2 points in 12 games or something.
It's possible.
I'm just saying it's possible. I'm just saying maybe he pulls a Mitch Marner, doesn't score at all, right?
True.
So just saying, right?
I don't know about that part.
But so you got to look at it. I think you're right. I think if everything goes well, but they don't make it past because of the narrative, they'll look at the goaltending. And
Yep.
I don't mind Kemper. I don't think he's a bad goalie. And I think that'll hurt Colorado if they keep going through this carousel of goalies looking for the right one.
Yeah, and I think eventually it's if this Kemper might be the end of the experiment on let's get a guy, we went and got Grubauer, we've made these moves for the last 3 or 4 years because of this. So if Kemper's not the guy, it's there's a serious discussion to be had there because free agency hasn't worked, trading hasn't worked, homegrown talent hasn't worked. There's clearly something very wrong with the organization and goaltenders. But I think they'll fix it up. I think it's going to be okay. Hopefully I'm right on that, knock on wood, but we'll definitely see come playoff time. Also, I think a lot of Colorado struggles in the playoffs. Again, I know I'm a homer, but when you have a high skill, high speed team, I hate defending Toronto. I do not like talking positively about the Maple Leafs, but they're built very similarly. Their crutch is the first round, right? And it seems like these high speed, high skill teams, when it comes playoff time, you might get 1 or 2 less calls a game. You might get 1 or 2 less penalties. But when your team is based around the speed and skill like Colorado and Toronto, and you don't get that extra power play and you don't get that momentum swing, and they're not calling the obvious trips or hooks or whatever it happens to be, that really slows teams like that down. And that's why, if you look back at who Colorado's been eliminated by, Vegas, San Jose, Dallas, they're big Western Conference meathead teams that just plow you into the boards, they knock you down, and they go to the front of the net. If you don't get the calls you need from that, they're going to beat you every single time if you're a skilled team. And I think that's been more indicative of the way Colorado's kind of gone in the playoffs than the whole team. But what you guys are saying is right. The media instantly looks at it must be the goaltender. McKinnon's not scoring enough. Is Cale Makar as good as he is? I don't think it's that as much as just as the way the game is played in the playoffs. And, they have brought up a guy, Curtis McDermott, sorry. He played for LA. I'm not going to lie, completely useless on defense, but they've been playing him as a 4th line forward. And, he fought Ryan Reeves the other night and wasn't a complete clean knockout, but he beat Ryan Reeves in a fight. Colorado hasn't had that in 10, 15 years. They haven't had a guy like that. And Vegas took out Bowen Byram in the playoffs last year, an elbow to the head concussion. The year before that, we were injured all the time from playing the bigger teams. So maybe this will kind of help with that. I'm kind of hoping a little bit, but we'll see going forward.
And that brings us back to the whole rebuilding discussion. I mean, the Canadiens are just starting out with that part. They have that gritty aspect in some of their younger players. They need to bring in the skill, whereas Colorado has all that skill, but they need some of that grit to really finish off, to polish off what they have. So the rebuild process isn't quite complete yet. And I agree. I don't think Kemper's really the issue. I do feel that you guys are lacking in those playoff type players. Like Landeskog is definitely one. Like you have a top line playoff style player right there because he's all heart.
Yep.
You don't want to go in the corner with that guy.
Yep.
But it's on defense. You need a couple of those types of players. Now, Johnson could probably do that, but not quite to the level that you need. So it's those little changes. Like maybe, I don't know, someone who has experience in the playoffs and plays a physical game like a Ben Sherratt would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think, was it last year or 2 years ago? I'm blanking. Ian Cole, when they didn't re-up him, I understand why, because, you have Bowen Byram, Makar, Gerard, all these young guys coming up.
Yeah.
They're all studs. You don't have time for an Ian Cole, right? But you know what? In those two, I think he played in two back-to-back playoffs with us, and he was invisible, which is a good thing as a defenseman. He wasn't making mistakes, but he'd be the only guy laying the hits. You know what I mean? He'd be on every penalty kill. Yeah, we need that style. Johnson's, you're right. He's sort of coming into that now in his older age, but he's not as physical as you'd want to be. I think there's got to be somebody out there, like you said, or Sherratt or someone like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they move for them, even if they're like a seventh D that, first two games of a series, it's not going the way we want. Okay, we're going to fire him in instead of Jack Johnson or whoever happens to be, right? I think that's definitely, you'll see that at the trade deadline, because that is the biggest glaring hole in my opinion right now. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's a huge reason why Montreal went to the finals, I think, is because their defense just smothered the other players. Like when they went down 3-1 to Toronto and came back and won that series, by the way, if any Leaf fans are listening and forgot, that's how they won. I mean, Leafs will say, oh, it's because we lost Tavares. Well, you won 2 games after you lost or 3 games after you lost Tavares. So that narrative got to go. But it's because Montreal's defense and like guys like Paul Byron and Lehkonen and Anderson and that just smothered the other players. They couldn't get their speed in. They couldn't use their skill. And you're absolutely right. It's a wholly different game in the playoffs. It's a totally different called game in the playoffs. And that's all they did. They just pushed them out of the front of the net, used their strength and size, and they ended up winning games 2-1 and 3-2. And there weren't high scoring games, but they kept the skilled guys in check, and that's how they did the same with Vegas, and they did the same with Winnipeg, and they did the same with well, they did do it with Tampa, but they should have.
That's what Vegas did to Colorado.
Correct. Yeah.
To win the chance to lose to Montreal.
I was so hoping that we would beat Vegas and Montreal will go through, just so I could have a Montreal-Colorado playoff series. Because it will never probably happen ever. And, the history between the two teams, obviously, it would have been so great. But
it could happen in the finals this year.
It could, yes. Well, let's hope for that this year, maybe next year.
If Montreal wins at an 800 winning percentage for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Or COVID shut down the league, and they just let Montreal into the playoffs.
Yeah. There's hope. You're saying there's still hope.
There's still hope. Still hope.
No. Please don't.
Please
don't. So, all right. Before we let you go, why don't you remind our listeners where they can find your products, how they can get a hold of you guys, the bio.
Yep. So you can find us in just about any Nova Scotia liquor store. I'm pretty sure we're in every single one, with a variety of selection depending where you're at. But generally, if you go to the big NSLCs, you can find most of our stuff. We also are in Harvest wines and stuff like that. Rockhead, just a bunch of the private wine stores and stuff in around the city. And you can always ask if we're, if we have something that we have and it's not available. A lot of those private places will try to get it in and do all that stuff. Or down at our tap room here in Shelburne, we have everything that we're producing here, obviously. So social media, everything, Boxing Rock, you can find us, all of our promotions, everything that's going on, what we got planned coming up, some new stuff for the new year, that'll all be there. But yeah, best place to look is always the liquor store. We have a big selection there, and then you can kind of branch out from there and find some of our more specialty stuff.
That's definitely my favorite store in the province.
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to thank you, Daniel, for coming on the show and for helping us put out the word on Boxing Rock. It's definitely a product that I've enjoyed for quite a few years, and I'm glad that we partnered up.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks for having me on here today. Hope everyone goes out and, grabs a 12-pack of Puck Off and give it a go, and give me some feedback. I can always, readjust it and make it better for you guys. So thanks for having me again, guys. I appreciate it. And it's great talking to you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. Have a good one.
Okay. So that was Daniel from Boxing Rock. We'll move on to our next portion of the show, and that's all Habs. It's all about the Habs. I tried to tie in the rebuild a little bit on
all
there.
Habs?
No, this is a good show.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, all about the Habs. No, I think it was a good point of view, though, to have Daniel, who is an Avalanche fan, to give us a little bit of an idea of a rebuild is never really complete until you win.
True, it's true. But that, see, now we got to talk. How are we gauging a rebuild? How are we engaging the, let's talk Bergevin years. How are we gauging? We always said, like I've always said, Bergevin's year is going to be cut in half.
Yeah,
there's Bergevin version 1 and Bergevin version 2. I personally believe Bergevin version 2 was trying to do the best rebuild that he could without really rebuilding.
it was more retooling.
It was retooling, but I believe he wanted a rebuild, and I believe Molson was like, no, I want playoffs. And I think that's what's been going on for 20 years.
Yeah.
I think GMs want to rebuild. Like, I think Bob Gainey wanted to rebuild, but he was told, no, this is Montreal. We got to make the playoffs. Like, we can't be out of the playoffs for 5. And it goes crying for a rebuild. You got to realize that we're going to have a crappy team for 3 to 5 years.
At least two. At least
two. But I mean, I personally, I'm like Matt. I think Matt said it a few shows ago when I was on. It was Grant McKegg. I don't think they're that far off with what they have. Like, I don't think they're that far. Like, do they need a full rebuild, or do they just need some tweaking? I think that's what Gorton has to try to figure out, especially when he hires his new GM, which direction they want to go there and what they have. It's hard to evaluate, though, when you don't have any players playing because they're all injured. So,
well, I think Bergevin went with the retooling, and we can't say it wasn't successful because they did make a cup final. You can call it a miracle run, blah, 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 but it's a team that under whatever rules and regulations they had to follow, they made a cup final. I think now, because of everything that's gone on with over the last few years and the fact that they did make the playoffs under COVID, Molson seems to be a little bit more open to the whole rebuild thing.
well, if you look back and you take the COVID years away, I don't think Montreal makes the playoffs either year.
Probably not.
But we'd also have a different team. We probably also have a guy like we'd be picking around 9th if we picked 2 years ago. So you'd have a guy like what's his name there, starts with a P. Perfetti or someone to that, because he went around there. Last year we had a full season. I don't know how Montreal would have done with a full season last year. I think they would have been a bubble team if they stayed healthy all year. But with Price injured most of the year, I really don't think they would have made the playoffs. So again, you're looking at a top 15 pick from last year's draft.
So maybe they got Amarov instead of Gouli, something like that.
I meant last year they would have had Mayu when they went to the final.
Oh, instead of, yeah. So they would have definitely gone a different way.
Correct. They would have we wouldn't have all this controversy.
Maybe a Mercer.
Yeah, Dawson Mercer or something like that.
Yeah.
So I still think Bergevin might still be there, or there might be a contract extension signed. I don't know about that. But you would still have to look. That would be 4 years that they didn't make the playoffs in a row. And where's the team at? Are they any closer to being a playoff team? And we're all hypothetically.
But even if that were to happen and the Canadians still had Weber and Price on the roster, we would still be at the point we're at now, where they would have to start thinking about moving some of these contracts out, which is essentially part of the rebuild.
But do you sign guys like Toffoli and Anderson and all this stuff if you don't make the playoffs in the COVID year? Like, if you don't do what you did against Pittsburgh in the COVID year, are you signing Toffoli and Edmondson and trading for Anderson in the offseason? I don't think you are.
No.
So we're a totally different team than what we are right now. And we don't have that. We don't have these big contracts. You don't have a Hoffman. You don't have a, Toffoli. You don't have a Edmondson. You don't have a Anderson.
No, but you'd still have Price. You'd still have Weber. And those are contracts you would still end up having to talk about moving out.
Yeah.
So they'd be in essentially the same spot they are in right now, It's just that they have more contracts that they may or may not move.
They'd have more cap space. They'd have
Yeah.
more. Now they're just looking at, do we want these aging players with these big contracts? Not so much, we have all these contracts, we got to get rid of a few of these, no matter what age they are. I mean, that's where they're at right now. They have all these contracts, and now they're like, okay, we got to get rid of a few of these if this is what we're going to do. Right. So,
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at now. I think that's where Gorton and his management team are going to be pointing this team towards. So I feel like the next couple of years are going to be a little bit tight, but I mean, it's the first time in Canadians history that we've been at this point. So
yeah,
enjoy the historical ride, I guess.
I think when it comes to price, it'll be Price's. I mean, he has a no move clause, so it'll be Price's choice
Yeah.
regardless. Weber's a non-issue, I think, because I don't think he's coming back. I think he's going to be LTI.
No, but you could probably move him to, say, Nashville, who can then control whether he retires or not. So the cap recapture is not an issue.
Right.
And it can give him like that full circle of going back to Nashville where it all started. And you might be able to get something out of them.
Well, you could probably definitely get a first round pick if they're worried about that recapture penalty. Depends
That's
on what that
$24
recapture.
million.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. Because Weber, as long as he's making money, he's not going to retire.
Well, you never know. He might decide to if he's with the Canadians, because the Canadians don't care. I mean, there's no cap recapture for them anymore. So
For this season, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So they don't care. So they're not going to stop him. But if he were with Nashville, maybe they would. So there's a possibility that could happen. I don't know about that, but it's a possibility.
I mean, it saves Nashville $24 million, and it gives them 7.8 million relief on the cap.
That's right.
Every year that they have them. So to me, that's worth a first, but who knows what Nashville's going to do. Depends on what
Exactly.
they.
And with Carey Price, yeah, he has that no move clause, and we have to wait to see if he actually comes back to hockey. Like, we don't know if he will want to come back.
Well, he was taking shots. He was taking shots this week, and he's traveling with the team, and
we'll see.
Things look like he might be coming back. Also, you got to think, if Price is going to go somewhere, he's going to want to go to a contender. I would assume,
or to the West Coast.
And if he's going to go to a contender, I don't think anyone has the money to take him, to be honest with you, unless Montreal retains some of the salary.
Yeah. And that's what 4 more years after this one, retaining salary. It's kind of tough.
It's got to be at least 50%,
which is almost that's $5 million.
Yeah.
For the next 4 years.
Is Montreal going to want to do that? $5 million for nothing. So I personally think Price stays. I don't think he goes anywhere. And I think they just live with his cap.
Maybe plays a couple more years and retires, but I'd like to see him get that one last chance at a cup.
Me too.
The Ray Bourque experience.
Yeah. Send him to Colorado. With him and Druin to Colorado.
That's a Stanley Cup for the Habs right there.
Yeah.
Right there. We just solved your problems.
And then it'd be send Ducharme, and it'd be like he's coaching the old Mooseheads.
Yeah.
Just need to get Ellers from Winnipeg.
Oh, he wasn't on that team though.
No, he wasn't. It was let's see.
He joined the year after. That was Ferk. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Ferk. Yeah.
Ferk's definitely available.
Definitely. Wherever he's playing.
All right. So from there, the news out of Montreal last night, Arturi Lehkonen has entered COVID protocols, and the Canadians had to cancel the practice. Now, do you think that this kind of points to the league is starting to look at possibly a shutdown, like a circuit breaker shutdown for a couple of weeks, let things blow over?
Well, Boston, Nashville, there's 4 or 5 teams that are done till after Christmas.
Calgary.
Well, Calgary, the whole team has COVID. So
yeah.
Toronto, a bunch of their guys just went into players, including Sheldon Keefe. I think it makes sense. Listen, I'm on with this COVID thing. I'm kind of on a fence now. I'm kind of like the hospitalizations aren't going up. We're going to live with this forever. Like this isn't going away. It's never going away. It's not. It's the new flu. It's not the flu. So don't take what I just said as me comparing COVID to the
You
flu.
mean it's endemic?
It's endemic, and it's never going away. We're going to have it for the next however long we're going to have it. And I think the NHL should shut down. I mean, if teams are, I don't think there'll be Olympics. So I think they're going to have a 3-week buffer period. They can put games in. Well, I don't think the NHL is going to go to the Olympics. I'm not saying the Olympics will get canceled, but I don't think the NHL is going to go to the Olympics.
No, I don't think so either. I think the players are going to vote not to go.
Yeah. So they'll have a 3-week buffer period to get the games back. I have no issue with them pausing the season. I really don't. Especially when I have half my team on injured and gives them, recovery time without missing any games. But there will come a time when not just sports, but at countries, everything's you're going to have to make a choice. Like, when are we going to go back to normal? When are we I mean, I think the kids should be vaccinated and everyone should be vaccinated before they decide to do the full switch, but because it's never going away. So it's tough. It's tough to run a league when you don't know, I mean, and apparently no one's seriously ill with the COVID so far, of what I've read. No one's
This
it's the new Omicron, which is not as bad, I guess. I mean, we don't know the long-term effects, but the short-term effects are basically just, you're a little sick. It's like having a cold, I guess. So
well, it is merged. So it kind of merged itself with the common flu or the common cold, and the effects are less severe, but it is almost 100 times more transmissible.
It's very high trend. And I think that's what's happening in the NHL now is people are like, oh, I got a little bit of a cold. I'm still going to go into work, or I'm still going to go into play. And then all of a sudden,
boom,
bam, the entire team has COVID. So
yes, I agree with you. I do feel like this is also endemic at this point. And if we can get all the kids vaccinated, or the opportunity to do so, and we give all the adults a booster, I do feel like we're going to be seeing booster shots for the next, every couple of years.
It's going to be like the flu. The flu, you get a booster shot every year.
Yeah.
If you want to. I mean, I'm sure these next booster shots after a couple of years will be if you want to take it or not. But I think the thing I do take positive out of this is it's proven that vaccines are working, because the hospitalizations are not going up. COVID cases are going up.
Yeah.
But like here in Nova Scotia, I believe we have over 1,000 cases, but we only have 8 people in the hospital and only 2 in ICU as of yesterday. I don't know if that changed, but
and that's going to be the big key piece. The less people that go into the hospital, the more likely it is that we'll be able to ease off and and it'll become an endemic versus a pandemic, and then we can start to redo things as per normal.
Yeah, because you got to admit, once masks all start coming off, you're going to see another spike.
Oh yeah,
it's a guarantee.
Yeah,
but you have to look at the hospitalizations. I mean, we're getting off hockey topic here, but you have to look at the hospital. If they're not going up, then, and this is why I think it's endemic and more of an endemic now than a pandemic, because I just don't see it going away. I just don't see it.
Hopefully this is the version that stays, because if it's as mild as it seems, and I'm not saying it won't get worse, but right now it seems like it's better off than that Delta. So if this is the one that stays, then all right.
Yeah. So
anyway,
the NHL, I think the NHL should pause till after Christmas. I mean, there's only a couple games left anyway.
Yeah.
Like pause until the new year, and then come back and see what happens.
Because the teams can't deal with having no fans in the stands. Like the Canadians playing without people in the stands in that game against Philadelphia, that's about $2 million to $3 million gross revenue that didn't come in.
Especially if they want to raise the cap another $1 million there next year.
Not to mention the players want to stop paying that escrow payment, which is supposed to take a couple more years. So if you keep going with this, no fans in the stands, you're missing out on $2 to $3 million in gross revenue every single game. That's a huge hit.
Yeah. Montreal wins with no fans. So what do you want?
Yeah. So I'm sure the fans would rather have people in the stands so they can lose, get their first pick.
Yeah.
Players make their money. And speaking of players, we'll move on from this portion of it to the last section, and that's the younger players. So in the last game against Philly, we saw that there was more ice time and larger roles given to the young players. And lo and behold, it was an entertaining game that they had won. Weird, I know. So Romanov played over 24 minutes. Caulfield and Ylonen were both over 16. They both had power play time. Caulfield on the top power play. So
Paling last game, I think, had 17 minutes.
Who's that?
Paling, I think, had 17 minutes last game. 15. Okay.
Yeah. And Suzuki had 25 playing in all situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if Gorton had a talk to Ducharme or if Ducharme just turned around and said, but I've noticed in the last 5 games that Caulfield and Paling's, I didn't really pay attention to Ylonen as much, but Caulfield and Paling's ice time went up. Paling went from 9 minutes a game to, I think the least he played in the last 5 was 13-20. And Caulfield went up from 10 minutes a game to 15. So and Caulfield looked great. I think that was his best game that he's played since being in Montreal. Like, even though he didn't get a point, he had 8 shots. He was all over the ice. He was Carter Hart robbed him a couple times. So I'll give credit to Carter Hart, even though I think he's an overrated goalie. But Carter Hart robbed him a couple times. He had good shots. He was playing well. He's getting himself open. Now what I want to see, and I'll do the whole, but I want to see Caulfield start playing. I like him playing with Paling, but I like to see maybe him and Paling taking that second line minutes with, say, like a Huffman or a Drouin or someone like that on the other side of them. A little bit more talent instead of a Pezzetta or Lehkonen.
Well, see, with Lehkonen, it worked out really well because Lehkonen, his game, he's good at puck retrieval. He's very good at the forecheck, gets the pucks in, he picks them up off the boards. Paling opens up ice up the middle with his size and his speed. He's physical as well. And then Caulfield finds those dead zones behind him. And that's why I wanted Caulfield playing with Paling. And since the two have been playing together, both have been playing excellent hockey.
And it just goes to show that Ducharme is one of the greatest coaches that ever coached the game. He knows what to put together. It takes him a while. To figure it out. But once he figures it out, boy, Montreal's going on a 10-game win streak. It's guaranteed now. So,
well, I mean, after he ignored our emails where we sent him copies of the show, he finally listened and said,
"Oh, finally listened to the show." And he put the power play together that I wanted, and except for the defense, but
baby steps.
But you've said it many times, and I hate tooting your horn, but you got to play the skill. And if you're not going to play the skill, you're not going to win the games. And he's finally starting to play the skill. I still don't understand why Armia's getting so much ice time, but because he's horrible. And don't get me wrong, I'm an Armia fan. I always rooted for him. I always thought he'd be a 20, 25 goal scorer if he was healthy. And
but he's playing like shit.
This year, he's like Jeff Petrie, and I think Jeff Petrie's injured. I don't care what anyone says. No one drops off a cliff that far. I think Jeff Petrie's dealing with some mental and physical stuff, to be honest with you. And I say mental meaning I don't think he's happy with the way he's playing, and I don't think he's happy with the way the team's going, and it's affecting his play. But with Armia, I don't know. There's nothing in his game that impresses me at all.
Well, he was supposed to be a healthy scratch for that game against Philly, but then, someone else got hurt and he had to jump in. And I think that's what he needs. Like, look at what happened to Romanov with his healthy scratch. Romanov's been probably the best defenseman on the team besides Sherratt since coming back from
from that one game press box suspension.
I'd argue that Romanov is the better one
Mm-hmm.
in his own zone, especially.
Yeah. I mean, I just think Sherrod's playing great hockey. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
he's the true leader out there on the ice. And yeah, maybe it's because it's his contract year, because a lot of players always play well in their contract year. But
Yeah, he's playing for a contender to pick him up.
yeah, and good for him. And
Yeah.
you know, the better he plays, it just means the better pick. What the return we're going to get for him when we trade him off will be better. I mean,
Yeah,
so good that you have fans now saying we should re-sign him because he's the best defenseman we have.
hell no. He should be walking into those press conferences and sitting down going, am I worth a first now?
I mean, I like Sherrod, but I'm
Yeah.
not keeping him. I'm not, especially if you're going to have to probably give him $4 to $4.5 million to keep him.
Well, you think about what's coming up. You have Harris, you have Struble, you know, you've got all kinds of young
Fairbrother, Gooley, Norlinder.
Exactly.
There's no room.
Jacky.
Jacky, yeah, I like Jacky.
So you've got all these guys coming up. Do you want to sign this player who's, you know, flirting with 30 for several years for a high cap hit? Or do you want to just trade him now, get your first round pick, and make room for the younger guys to move up?
This is exactly what you're going to do, especially
Yeah.
if you're rebuilding or even retooling. You're not keeping ending contracts. You're just not doing it. No.
Especially not when you have Edmondson still there, Savard is still there, Petrie's still there.
And Edmondson's what? His is up next year. His contract's over next season.
Got 2 more seasons after this.
2? I thought it was just 1 after this. All right. 2 more seasons. Savard, well.
3 more.
3 more. Petrie, 27 more. So but
he's got 3 more after this as well.
Yeah. But I mean, still, and that's almost perfect timing for the young guys, because Norlinder and Gooley, I think, will be on the team next year. So you'll have Norlinder, Gooley, and Romanov, and I think they're going to fit into your top 4 somehow.
Yeah.
So,
I think Norlinder going back to Sweden is a good works out best as well. It gives him more ice time. It gives him more. It puts him into a more comfortable position. He's closer to home again.
Yeah.
And then next year when he comes back to North America, he'll have more of the mindset of I'm staying, as opposed to this year it was, well, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see.
I think if he got more ice time in Montreal, I think it would have been a different added outlook for him as well.
Maybe.
But did he deserve the more ice time?
In the
He
earlier
deserved
goal,
power. I
would
think
say
he
so.
deserved power play time. I think he deserved more power play time than what he got.
Yeah.
But he has a lot to learn, especially on the defensive side of the game. I had no issue with him staying in Laval. I think the move to Sweden was more of to make him comfortable than to make,
Yes.
because he's got, I think he would have got just as much ice time in Laval as what he's going to get in Sweden. They have another defenseman over there now that's similar to Norlinder that's been ripping it up in Frölunda. So,
And he's gone now, right now, with Team Sweden for the World Juniors.
right.
So that opens up
So-
a window for him to regain his old spot.
Regain his old spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but good for him. He's going to get the ice time in Sweden regardless. He's going to be close to home. He's going to feel more comfortable, and hopefully it'll pick his game up. He'll learn on his deficiencies over there in Sweden for when he comes back.
All right. I think that pretty much does it for this episode. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just want to, this probably be my last one until after Christmas. So I just want to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. Be safe and enjoy your families this holiday season.
I'll echo that sentiment, and I'll say happy holidays because I want to trigger people. You can still say Merry Christmas. It's
Nobody
legal.
cares if you say Merry Christmas.
Or happy holidays. It's
No one
all
cares.
the same. No one cares. Stop pretending that like people care. So Merry Christmas, happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. I hope you enjoy the celebration that you and your loved ones share together, no matter how big or small your bubble is. I want to remind everyone that today is the 19th of December. As of tomorrow, the 20th, it's the last day to purchase Habs Unfiltered t-shirts from 514 Shirts. 100% of the profits will go to Vets Canada, And that money will use to help end veterans homelessness and to provide support to other programs that Vets Canada provides. So it's almost Christmas time. Buy 10, 15, 20 shirts, hand them out to friends and family, keep a couple for yourself, and, help out vets where you can. And remember, if you were talking about it, so are we.